Hey, Auto Gypsy Garage crew. Where's Jake? So, Jake, today we got this 74 Volkswagen Beetle. It's a local guy. His name's Matt. He's our barber at Good Old Boys Barber Shop. One thing that we do is we build high-end show cars, and we just do maintenance stuff on local people's old vehicles, keep them on the road. So today we're going to do a valve adjust on this. We're going to change the oil. We got to replace the valve cover gaskets. That's a good thing to do. And we're going to try to do like a little bit of a how-to video with this as well. So we're going to kind of clip along pretty quick and show things how we're doing it. Let's do it to it. So Jake, what we're going to do next is get this thing up on all fours. We're not fortunate enough to have a lift right now, so for you at-home guys, we'll show you how that works out in your driveway. Put this up on jack stands. If you remove the rear back tires, it gives you access to the valve cover and all the valves really easy on the side if you're not on your back trying to get it done. So that's the first thing we're going to do is get this up in the air, and then we'll show you how to set your timing and do the valve adjust, how to replace your valve cover gaskets so they don't slip and leak and all that good stuff. So let's go ahead and get this thing up in the air. Okay guys, when you jack up your vehicle, you want to make sure you don't jack the vehicle up on your oil pan and put a hole in it. So what we did is we took this piece of 2x4, we ran it up here toward the front where the main engine mount bolts. There's a cross member right here. That seems to be the sturdiest place to jack up, so that's what you want to do there.
So I went ahead and removed the tire. I just want to give you a quick little note on where you should put your jack stand. We went ahead and put it underneath the shock itself, right on that bottom shock mount. And as you can see, it's pretty earthquake proof. We thought about jacking it up from there, but it can cause a lot of body flex and stuff that you just don't want. So rather be safe than sorry, and so we put it underneath there. So we jacked up the front of this car just by this front cross beam right here, and then we slid our jack stands under, and we just have them supported by the front sway bar. So that should hold it. Still earthquake proof. Since we're adjusting the valves, we're going to go ahead and give it an oil change.
So while we're doing our oil change on our Volkswagen, we noticed that this bottom plate that goes on the oil pan was seeping. So we went ahead and got one of these oil change gasket kits to show you what we like to do with making sure we have success on how it seals. I'm going to go ahead and there's two gaskets. I'm not quite sure why they have two gaskets. I would think that one gasket would be suffice. So what we're going to do is we're going to use some Permatex. This is number 2 gasket. It's non-hardening. Kind of just put it in a happy little layer, nothing too brutal and thick.
Alright, so now that my dad has this all pooped up with some number 2 sealer, we're going to go ahead and align it with the studs. Just take your original nuts, they should be a 10 millimeter, and you just kind of want to tighten them up hand tight, but also don't forget to put these little tiny copper washers on there before you put on your nut. then just take the 10mm and just snug them up. You're going to want to kind of cross pattern it, that way it goes down nice and even. Don't be afraid to just kind of creep up on it. When you're not in a race, you can do it 10 times. Just make sure it gets a nice, good, even, consistent seal. That's feeling pretty consistent. Now, we'll go ahead and remove the oil filter. Be sure to go ahead and wipe down this little oil plate. You don't want any dirt or debris causing leaks and problems down the road.
Now that we got the oil drained and the old oil filter removed, we're going to go ahead and put on this Mobile One high efficiency filter. But one thing I like to do before I install these is I like to put a little bit of lube on this gasket. And we'll usually put a little oil in here to kind of pre-charge the filter. You don't need a whole lot. This is a super small filter. I'll just take a little bit of oil that's right here, put it around that ring, and that makes it so it doesn't go on dry, and it gives you a better accurate torque reading, and it helps seal it up as well. I'm going to go ahead and top this off with 3.8 quarts of oil. Our 1974 Volkswagen Beetle has a external oil cooler, and so it's going to require more oil than as if it didn't have one.
The next thing we're going to want to do is remove the valve cover and these little spring retainer valve cover holders, whatever you want to call them. They can be pretty hard to get off sometimes, but if you just take a rag, kind of stuff it up there like that, well, grab both ends of the rag and just comes right undone. You don't scratch anything, still looks nice and factory. Now you'll be able to remove it.
Okay guys, before we adjust the valves, the first thing you're going to want to do is make sure that your pulley right here is up on top dead center on number 1 spark plug. And so you rotate this until you get this mark here to split with this case right here. I've got this here on top dead, and then this actually worked out to where this also landed on the number 1 cylinder. So that way we do know we're on number 1. If this was off 180 out, it could be over here on number 3. Or another technique that you can do to make sure you got number 1 spark plug where this is lined up right and this is on number 1 is you can pull the cap off and you can see that it's lined up here. I believe that's number 1. If it was plumbed correctly, this would be number 1, but we want to double check. So I'm going to follow this spark plug wire back and just kind of make sure that, yeah, that's the one, and it's going back to number 1. So that will guarantee me that I'm on top dead center on number 1, and I can go ahead and adjust the intake and the exhaust valve at the same time. One thing that you can do to make sure that you are right there is you can rock this back and forth a little bit, and if someone's down there looking at the valves, they really shouldn't be moving. If they're moving, you know you're not on number 1. So we're going to go ahead and double check that and show you how to adjust the valves. So one thing I went ahead and did before I just adjusted the valves and loosened everything up is I kind of wanted to see where they were at before we started. This one's at like 3.5 thousandths because the 3 goes in kind of loose, but the 4 is way tight. This one I can't really get a 2 or a 3 in there, so it's probably real close to a 2 and a 3.5. These should be adjusted at 6 thousandths each, so we know that whoever did this last set it up pretty tight. Now I'm going to want to go ahead and take my 13mm wrench and break that loose, the jam nut, and this you can screw in and out. So I'm going to screw it out a little bit, get my feeder gauge. See, now it's just way loosey-goosey. I'm going to go ahead and kind of just snug that up against it. So there, it's tight. back it up a little bit, and you just want a little bit of drag on there. You don't want it way brutally tight, but you do want to feel some friction. That feels pretty good. I like to pull it out, see if I can put it back in. Yeah, that feels pretty good right there. So you're going to want to make sure to keep this where it was, which is about right there, and then tighten your jam nut. You want to make sure that you don't let this center bolt turn any way, because it'll affect your final gap there. We'll set the jam nut, check it with my 6/1000 gauge. That right there actually feels a little bit loose. So I'm going to go back in, loosen my jam nut. Probably just go ahead and go in just a little teeny bit and try it, because it was right close. Oh man, it's hard with this exhaust to... Let's see where we're at now. Probably tight. That's how it goes. Oh, I actually like that. I kind of feel it going in, and it has a little bit of drag. So I'd call that a day on that one. I'm just going to go ahead and maybe try to give this another little tighten down, making sure not to let this turn at all. Yeah, that's tight. You don't got to herc it too tight, but you don't want it backing off. So now that I've gone ahead and done this side, we're going to do this side the same way and go around and do all of them. Now that we got our number 1 exhaust and intake valve adjusted, we're going to come back up here to our crank pulley, and if you turn this counterclockwise, actually instead of clockwise, it should line it up to where number 2 is going to be the next one, which will put you 1, 2, 3, 4. So by turning this counterclockwise a full half of a turn, so I've gone ahead and I've marked my pulley already at a full half and put that up, so we're at 180 degrees out now. This should be pointing at number 2, and the number 2 down there, the valves, when I rock this back and forth like this, the intake and exhaust valve on number 2 shouldn't be moving, and then we know that we're on number 2. Okay, I've noticed, let's see, what am I going to say? I've noticed what? But what do I say? I've already started to embarrass myself on camera, so if you could just please like and subscribe. To continue with our valve adjust, we're going to repeat what we did on cylinders number 1 and number 2 on cylinders number 3 and 4. Now let's move on to replacing our valve cover gaskets and showing you how I glue them on so they don't slip and slide and become leakers down the road. Okay guys, now that we got our valve covers off on our engine, we're going to go ahead and remove these gaskets and put new ones on. Get up underneath this. This is a homemade device. Just made it thin and sharpened the edge. Makes it pretty nice. Okay, now that I got that off, I'm going to go ahead and clean this surface here up real good. Kind of give it a once over with the scrapey. Okay, now that I got that cleaned up some, I'm going to go ahead and take some lacquer thinner or some kind of cleaning solvent. Put a little bit on my rag right here. And we'll wipe off this surface so we have a nice clean surface for our new sealer. We're going to use some 3M yellow adhesive sealer and glue this cork gasket onto the valve cover. There's a bunch of different sealers you can use, but we like to use something that really keeps it glued and firm so it doesn't slide and slip. Next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to pre-test fit my gasket before I start gluing, just to see how we're fitting, and it's going to be nice and tight, which I like. Sometimes it's loose on the corners and they want to slide in really bad, but these gaskets seem to want to push themselves out all the way to the edge of this lip right here, which is going to make for a nice glue job. So I'm going to flip this over, take my 3M, kind of holding my nozzle up off the cork a little bit while I'm squeezing and going in a circular motion just to get good coverage and not make it too thin. You can let that tack up a little bit if you want on this 3M stuff. I'm going to go ahead and put it on there. Kind of go around and push it down, make sure it feels nice and snug. It's not catching up on this lip out here. Push it toward the lip. Give it every chance you got to make it a nice installation. Kind of clean up any mess if you like. That came on. You saw how thick I put it on there, and there wasn't a whole lot of mess. There's a little here on the inside. I could come in and just do a little wiping if I choose. Now that we got our gasket all in place, we can go ahead and install this on our engine. So now we got all our valves adjusted, intake and exhaust. We can go ahead and install our valve cover here. Oh, I'm upside down, folks. That happens. Just kind of work your magic on there. You can kind of feel it. Like, yeah, that feels about centered. You know, you don't want it way hard to one edge, or I kind of like to feel like it's centered, and then I'll snap this on. Trying not to move the valve cover if you can. There it is on that side. Bam. There you go. That should be a non-leaker. Now that we got all our spark plugs removed, we're going to go ahead and install this compression tester on each one of these cylinders. We went ahead and got this hooked up on one of them already. But one tip that I can give you is that in order to make it not start up while you're cranking it, I like to disconnect the wire going to the distributor. So I'm going to follow this little green wire back to the coil, and here it is here. So I'm just going to unplug that little guy and make sure that I'm not going to try to start up while I'm, although the spark plugs are out, yes, I just don't want ignition going to any place. Another thing I like to do when I'm doing a compression check is I always, when I'm cranking it over, I have the throttle fully open. That way I'm allowing air, whoa, don't spark that, allowing air to come in and just let this vacuum pump give me an accurate reading. Okay, Jake, go ahead and crank it. Stop. We're reading at 130 on cylinder number 2. Now we're going to go ahead and check cylinder number 1. Go ahead, Jake, crank it over. Stop. That one's at 130 as well. Right on. Now I'm going to go ahead and check cylinder number 3. That one's right there at 130 as well. Nice. Looks like we might have a pretty consistent engine. Now we're going to go ahead and check cylinder number 4. Stop. Yeah, we're right there at 130. Looks like we got a pretty consistent little engine right here. So now we're going to go ahead and put our spark plugs in. I already went ahead and I gapped them at 26 thousandths. So we're going to go ahead and get our cap and rotor replaced, go ahead and fire this thing up, recheck our engine oil level, and hopefully this thing runs a lot better than it did before. The valves are quite tight, so that's going to make it seem like a constipation type situation. So yeah. Went ahead and grabbed my trusty screwdriver. I'm going to pry off these spring steel little holdy downer guys, holdy downers. Take this off. Yeah, inside the cap here you can see if possibly it's kind of gray and corroded. Yeah, it can be green. You can go in there and clean that up if you want. These caps are like $10, so we're going to go ahead and replace that. Go ahead and check the rotor. You can replace this too. They're about the same money, about $10, but we've been having a hard time getting parts lately, so we're going to go ahead and just clean this up with some 320 grit sandpaper. Doesn't take much. See right there? Boom, shiny. Yeah, that's all it takes. I'll give it a little zap right here too. And just a little something to kind of freshen it up. I'm going to go ahead and check the points inside here as well. Yeah, they seem to be not glued together. I'm gonna have to turn this over and watch these open and close, and I can set the gap on that. So now I got my wire here out of the way. I'm gonna actually just take this thing right out of here. Although I'm very scared about dropping the screw. The reason why I want to take it out is I'm gonna just quickly take some sandpaper and resurface my points. Make sure not to lose your little screw guy. So I'm just gonna check it, and you can see right there there's some white. There's like a white spot. That's where it's been making contact and sparking. So I'm gonna go ahead and just try to resurface that some. They're pretty, they got a lot of spring tension to them, so it's not like it's super easy to. So I'm just going to put this in there and pull it. And just kind of pull it on through. Just trying to give it a chance to have a new surface. I can see that I've cleaned it up a little bit more. There's still some of that white residue on there. I'm going to go ahead and drag it across it again. I gotta do it where it's flatter on the paper. Right here it's crinkly. Don't want to make it all crooked and weird. Surface your area unevenly, so just pull that through there for the third time. That's some 320 grit paper I used. That's not the ultimate paper, but it's a paper we had handy, so we used it, and you can use something similar. So I feel like I got that surface cleaned up pretty good. I feel confident there's going to be a nice new surface there for contact. Now we're going to attempt to put this back in there. Let's try it this way. We've got this right there. You just come. It's hard to land it because it's this right here is in the way from that to just go straight in, so you kind of got to come in on an angle. Trying. I want it. And there's success. Yay! So now that we got them resurfaced, I'm going to go ahead and put my 16 thousandths feeler gauge in here. I just got it sitting in there. I'm going to go ahead and tighten this down. Looks like yeah, we're still up on our lobe. It's tight, so I got to redo that. Sometimes you got to go back and forth. I think I'm just going to hold it with my hand a little bit, open it up, tighten it down. Check my gap. Yeah, that feels really nice. It's actually got a little bit of drag on it. I think I can open it up a little bit more. Is that a little bit too much? Yeah, there we go. You can just barely feel it kind of magnetized and in there. So there you have it. That's how you set the gap on your points. Now I'm going to go ahead and put my wire back on. This came with this insulator cappy doodah. Go ahead and put our restored rotor back on. So when I replace the cap, I'm going to want to make sure I locate it. And I know this is number 1. We're pointing at number 1. So just get your wires back on the way they came. And you can also double check and run back to each one and make sure that you've got your number 1, 2, 3, and 4 hooked up to your cap. And your firing order is actually right down here on this bracket right here is your firing order. So it's 1, 4, 3, 2. This has an arrow on it pointing that way, so you know when the motor's rotating it's going this way. So it's going to be 1, 4, 3, and 2 when you hook your wires back up. So we're going to go ahead and get that done. Now that I got my cap located, I definitely know where 1 is. I'm going to take that off. Right here on the bottom of this has this notch. It's wide, and that actually lines up with this notch right here. So I'm going to just kind of check it and be like, okay, that's number 1, and we'll make sure to get number 1 on there. Voila. Now I feel confident I can just kind of snap that back into place, and I'll come right here, pull off number 4. This one should be number 3. This one's number 2. Kind of want to make sure you get them in there all the way, and you feel that they got a positive connection there. Yeah, it feels good. And we'll do our coil. Yeah, and all these look pretty good. This doesn't look corroded or nothing weird. Gonna want to run it clean. Don't just be chaos, you know, and have it twisting over things. Kind of have some strategy to what you're doing. So yeah, like that. Okay guys, it's been a long haul. You've stuck with this through thick and thin. So what we've done is the compression check, replaced the spark plugs, we restored the points, set the point gap, put a new cap on there. The next thing we have to do is start this thing up and take it on a test drive. We're thinking that we're probably going to have to go through the carburetor and rejet it for the 5,000 feet elevation that we're at. Now that we went ahead and got our Betty all completed on our checklist, we're going to go ahead and get this thing off the jack stands, take it for a test drive, see if it's got better power. Come on, Betty. Oh, we're trying. Seems like there's some carburation issues. It's really, if you try to give it the gas, it wants to fall on its face even more. So I think I'm gonna have to go through the carburetor and jet it for this altitude. It's probably running really rich. to the shop and go through the carburation. Jet it for this altitude, and we're at about 5,000 feet. So, oh, yeah, it just doesn't want to. You give it a little bit of gas and it's a dead horse. Come on, Betty. Oh, come on, Betty. Oh, there it is. Yeah, you got to go real slow with Betty. Nothing too fast on her. We'll get her remedied. Yeah. I'm Joe Dirt and I'm Joe Meteorite. And I'm in the Betty. Betty needs love on the carburetor. On our 74 Volkswagen Beetle, we went ahead and adjusted the valves. We did an oil change on this. We put our new distributor cap on it. We set the timing at 28 degrees total advance. We put new spark plugs in it, gapped them at 26 thousandths. And we're still getting a real gassy smell. When we go to take off, it's real hesitant. It's kind of puking. And so I'm going to go ahead and take this carburetor off and rejet this for our elevation. We're up here at 5,000 feet. These are always set at sea level, and so I know if I can get that jetted right, it'll run a lot cleaner. It is running way better than it was. It fires right up, so we're getting close on making this thing a sweetheart. So we're going to show you how to get this apart, what it takes to get this rejetted for your elevation, well, our elevation, and see if we can't get this thing to run better. So first thing I'm going to do is go ahead and take this air cleaner off. So they got some big clamp on there holding it on, this aftermarket air cleaner. Get rid of the fluctuator hose. Disconnect the choke. Get that up out of the way somewhere. We'll hook it right there. Get this fuel line off. I better grab me a rag so I don't make a big mess. I'm gonna need the persuasion pliers. It doesn't want it. Oy. She's a leaker, folks. She's saucy. Kind of looked like when I grabbed the hose, it started leaking right there. Might want to look and see if that hose is dry rotted or not. Got the actuator wire for the Hidget arm contraption unit. Looks like 13 is the magic number. Let's see. This side's going to be the tricky one. Getting back up in behind there. I'm going to go ahead and remove the distributor cap here just to give me a little more access. Not too hard, just got to be patient. Okay, there. Actually, there should be a cable hooked to this. Yeah, here it is, right here. This cable, got to disconnect that. Yeah, number 8 wins the game on that. Grab my pliers here and hold on to it so I don't try to tweak my cable. Loosen that up and this cable should just slide right out of there. That's nice. I'm going to go ahead and take this out just so I don't lose it. I'll just put it right back on here and snug it up just a little bit just to keep it from being lost in time. So in reality, this thing should just come right off. Now we'll take this and drain the gas into a bucket and get her over on the carburetor bench and get it taken apart. So I'm going to go ahead and spray this thing off before I take it apart. Just like that. Looking pretty fancy. We'll go ahead and blow it off with the air compressor and get it over on the bench. Okay guys, now I got this thing all cleaned up. I'm going to rejet this carburetor for the 5,000 foot elevation that we're at. I'm going to replace the main jet and the idle jet. What I've done is I've gone through and I've looked at what this carburetor had for factory specs, and then I leaned it down a percentage. I ended up going 12% on the main jet and only 9% on the idle jet. The next step down on the idle was 15% lean, which would probably be fine in actuality, but I didn't want to get too buck wild. So we're going to go ahead and show you right here on the bottom of this bowl, this access hole. It drains the bowl, and it also gives you the access you need for the main jet. So as you can see, maybe possibly down inside there is the jet, and so we're going to remove that and put in this other one. Whenever you're trying to figure out these jet sizes, you can look up the carburetor on the website that they sell them on, and it'll give you the specs inside these, and that way you have an idea how lean you want to go. I just take whatever the jet size was and lean it down by a percentage and see if they have a number that matches up close to it. So this one, yes, came from the factory with a 127.5, so I know no one's changed that because that's what was in there from the factory. This new jet, whoa, is a 112, so it's definitely leaner. I like to double check that sometimes. You can even have a brand new carburetor like this and someone could have gone in there and already changed it, so I wanted to just make sure that just to see if someone's been inside this or not, basically. That was slick. I was able to drop that jet in there and it almost just fell right into place, right side up, and the whole deal. That's unheard of, but yay. Just go ahead and let me find it and give it a little snug. You don't, these are made of brass, so they're real soft. You can mess them up. I like to use a pretty good screwdriver with a wide blade on it. That way I can get in there really clean. You get a small screwdriver on there and you'll start stripping it and putting metal in there. So this has got a aluminum crush washer on it, so make sure that's still on there, otherwise it's going to leak. Snug it up. You can feel the washer kind of crush. Yep, kind of bit and then slid a little bit, so I know that that washer is seating. You don't want to strip it out. Another thing you want to do is these settings from the factory are usually come preset. This one I can tell someone's been messing with it. It's got marring on the head. So we're going to set, once we get this on the vehicle, we're going to show you how to adjust the idle screw and your air screws, so that way we can get this at maximum idle. You want it right around 850 to 900 RPM. I'm going to flip it around. Right here is the location of my idle jet, so we get that taken out. Got my new one here. So yeah, they look same design, so we should be good. This one's got a flat head on it, this one does not, so I'm going to need to get a little bit of a socket to install that. Okay, what size was this bad boy? Looks like it was an 8mm. Go ahead and get that put in there. You don't want to tighten it super tight, but you can tell it's got a little seat on there, like a tapered edge that's going to seat in and seal. So you definitely want to get it tight enough to do that, but you don't want to strip it. Use 1/4 inch small stuff or a nut driver, something that, and then don't hold it out here, hold it up here, and just kind of give it a little twist with your fingers. Yeah, it feels good. So that's all there is to it. That's all you need to do to change your main jet and your idle jet. They do have an air jet in here, but at our elevation, it's down inside there, folks. But you have to take this apart, no big deal. But we were in parameters of what MP said was in that range for this jet packet to keep that air the same. So we didn't have to go ahead and change that. We're going to go ahead and get this back on the car and do all our final adjustments, set all the timing and the air fuels, and make it run right. So let's do that. Okay, I'm going to go ahead and take my rag out here. I'm going to replace this gasket here while I'm right. This one's really thin and kind of pooey. I just don't have a lot of faith in it. It looks like it's crushed out pretty good. I've got a new one here. It's thicker, better batter. But before I do that, I want to scrape this surface off and clean it up. And I'm back with the scraper. I'm going to go ahead and put this back in here and try to work around this here a little bit with the rag in it. Went ahead and got that scraped up. Set our new gasket on here. Yep, just like that. The fuel line was on this side to the back. Just like that. I'm going to work side to side. I'm not just going to tighten one side way down. Get this side snug, go back and forth. Get them so they feel about the same. Not too crazy, but just snug. And we can come back after we warm it up. This gasket's going to smash some because of the heat will expand and contract. So when it expands, it's going to smash the gasket more. Come back and retorque it after we heat it up and cool it down. When you retorque it, you want to make sure it's all the way cooled down. Let's get our wiring hooked back up. This goes over here to the idle switch, I believe is what that was called. This, I believe, was the power for the choke. It slides in here, like that. And this pin comes into it. Just like that. Kind of pushing this pin this way, and I can feel that I'm got zero lash, and so when I hit the gas pedal, we should be able to have instant throttle response. If it feels a little loose when you hit the throttle and you don't see this move right away, you can adjust this out some more, make the cable tighter. If it's not idling down all the way because you got your cable too tight, just do what works best for you. You got multiple things going on. This wants to tweak and this wants to open. Maybe if I put it right here. Oh yeah, now that's the spot. Now we can go inside and have someone press the gas pedal and make sure you're getting full throttle and make sure it responds as soon as he touches the gas. So I'm gonna have Jake go up front and do that. Just barely touch it. Let me see if it starts to move immediately. There, it's moving. Back up. So we feel like we got that lash out of there, and go ahead and put it to the floor. See if I'm getting full throttle. Yeah, you see that butterfly blade down in there? That looks like it's wide open to me. We're gonna go ahead and start it up and adjust our idle and all that from these screws here, and I'll show you how to do that next. Scared me. So the first thing I'm going to do is go ahead and get this thing warmed up, get it up to running temperature, and then we're going to set the choke before we start setting our idle screws and all that. So now that we got it warmed up and we know the choke's opened up all the way, you're going to want to adjust your choke fast idle screw right here. And so what you do is you take this, you back it away, and then you just want to barely get it right up to it. You just kind of get it right there where it touches, and do a quarter turn is what the manufacturer recommends, and that should set your fast idle when you go to set your choke. So the next thing we're going to do is adjust these two little guys here, which affects your idle. This lower little guy is called the volume control screw, and this bigger one is called the bypass screw, and this controls air and fuel during idle. They recommend that you set this one, you screw it in all the way until it barely seats, and you go out 2.5 turns to try it there. You can go out to 3 or down to 2, depending on what works best for your altitude. And then after you get that set at 2.5 screws out, then you come up here and you run it back up, and you're going to adjust this screw until you get about 850 to 900 RPM on your tachometer. And then after you've done that, you can go back and readjust this to get your optimum idle as well. So you kind of work back and forth a little bit, and that should be able to set your air-fuel mixture at idle. So I went ahead and set up my timing light for a tachometer. So I've got this set about 2.5. Now they want me to do the bypass screw, which is the bigger one. But as I screw it in, it gets worse. So I know I don't want that. Oh, there we go. You can hear it idle up right there. It sounds a lot better. It says to get it about 850, 900. So I'm just going to back this down a little bit more. Get us right down there in that 900 range. I'm going back to my volume screw and turn it just little increments. They say you want to get your max idle out of that. Out of this little screw. Kind of closing in it, opening it. Yeah, there we go. It's running like crap right there. You know we don't like that. Started sounding real smooth right there. A little smoother. Screwing this one in. The big dog, the bypass screw, just letting, trying to get it to idle down some where they recommend it. Right in there, 850 to 900. It seemed to, still runs good. What's nice is the parts that we bought for this with the gasket and the 2 jets was only like $23. And the fuel that you're going to save and the wear and tear on your motor and how good it's going to run is so worth the $23. And you can see you don't even have to take the carburetor apart. You just access it from the outside and do your adjustments. That's a little loose, and there's no adjustment there. Probably could use a new belt. But there you have it. We're sitting right there about 850-ish, 890, wherever. We're happy. Right between 850 and 900. Got good throttle response. So I think we've got it, folks. Next thing to do is go test drive it. Oh yeah, be sure to like and subscribe and ring the notification bell because we're giving away $1,000 in cash. So the first 1,000 subscribers to our channel, we're going to draw a name from them 1,000 subscribers once we hit 1,000, and we're going to give away $1,000 cash. So make sure to like and subscribe and check out our next videos.